Really glad you're here today. I hope you enjoy the video. And if you want to support the channel, tap subscribe. It's totally free, and it helps more than you'd think. One of Rob Reiner's most candid interviews in years hit viewers harder than they expected. Not because he dropped some flashy bombshell, but because he spoke with a plain human sincerity that's getting rarer in Hollywood. People weren't just listening to a director talk about old movies. They were hearing a man take stock of his life, his family, his work, and the way time quietly rewrites everything. Rob Reiner was born Robert Norman Reiner on March 6, 1947, in the Bronx, New York City, into a home where creativity wasn't a side hobby. It was the air everyone breathed. His father, Carl Reiner, became one of the defining figures of American comedy, writing and performing in early television and later shaping classics like The Dick Van Dyke Show. His mother, Estelle Reiner, was an actress and singer with a sharp presence of her own. Growing up in that house meant Rob absorbed timing, structure, and the idea that comedy is collaboration, something you build with other people, not alone. He attended UCLA for a time before his career fully took off, but the bigger point is this: storytelling was never going to be a temporary phase for him. Still, his first major fame came as an actor. In 1971, All in the Family turned him into a household name when he played Michael "Meathead" Stivic, the outspoken, idealistic son-in-law constantly clashing with Archie Bunker. The character could have been played as a cartoon, but Reiner brought real feeling underneath the comedy. Over 8 seasons, the role earned him major recognition and multiple Emmy nominations, cementing his place in TV history. Then he did what a lot of people wouldn't risk doing while they were still hot on television. He stepped away from the comfort of being recognized and moved behind the camera. And that's where his reputation exploded. In the 1980s, Reiner became one of the rare directors who could change genres like switching gears on a highway and still keep control of tone, pacing, and emotional truth. In 1984, This Is Spinal Tap blurred the line between mockumentary and reality so well that some audiences initially thought it was a real band. The satire wasn't mean-spirited, it was precise. He understood the ego, the insecurity, the absurdity, and the weird tenderness inside creative ambition. If you've ever seen a comedy that imitates documentary truth a little too well, you've seen Reiner's fingerprints. Then came The Sure Thing in 1985 and Stand By Me in 1986, a coming-of-age story that handled friendship, fear, and grief with quiet care. Stand By Me didn't talk down to kids and didn't romanticize growing up. It treated that in-between age as fragile and real. And the film's lasting popularity says a lot about Reiner's ability to pull genuine performances out of every scene. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, he went on a run that most directors never touch. The Princess Bride in 1987 became a forever classic because it understood something simple: sincerity is not the enemy of wit. When Harry Met Sally in 1989 reshaped romantic comedy with sharp dialogue and emotional realism, people still quote decades later. And then he flipped the mood with Misery in 1990, guiding Kathy Bates to an Oscar-winning performance built on tension, control, and a kind of fear that never needed cheap tricks to land. In 1992, A Few Good Men arrived like a cultural event. It was a courtroom drama, yes, but also a pressure cooker about power, duty, and how far people will go to protect their own narratives. Reiner didn't just stage scenes, he staged moral collisions. That's why the line stuck, and why the movie didn't fade after opening weekend. If you're enjoying this kind of deep dive, take a second to subscribe now, because these stories hit differently when you follow the whole thread, not just the headlines. Off-screen, Reiner stayed outspoken. His political activism has drawn both praise and pushback over the years, but the through line is the same. He rarely plays quiet when he believes something matters. To some, that's admirable. To others, it's polarizing. Either way, it fits who he's always been since the Meathead days. A guy who doesn't pretend neutrality when he feels conviction. His personal life carried its own layered chapters too. In 1971, he married Penny Marshall, another creative force who would later become a major director in her own right. Reiner adopted Marshall's daughter, Tracy Reiner, and by most accounts he treated that family bond as real and permanent, not performative. Their marriage ended in divorce in 1981, closing a chapter that still mattered to his story. Years later, Reiner met photographer Michelle Singer during the era when he was making When Harry Met Sally, and he has said that falling in love shifted his outlook enough to influence creative choices. They married in 1989 and raised 3 children together, building a family life that, from the outside, looked grounded in loyalty and shared values. Reiner and Singer also leaned into early childhood advocacy. In the late 1990s, they launched the I Am Your Child Foundation, and later, Parents Action for Children, efforts aimed at educating parents about early development and pushing for policies that support kids and families. It wasn't the typical celebrity cause of the month vibe. It was long-term, less glamorous, more stubborn work. Now, the interview people have been talking about wasn't just a victory lap. It felt like a reflective checkpoint. Reiner talked about his early years with a light touch, memories from All in the Family, the pressure of doing comedy on a national stage, the weird shock of realizing a character can become a cultural symbol. He laughed about being young and still figuring out his voice. But even the laughter felt like it had weight under it, like he was remembering the cost as well as the fun. Then the tone shifted. He started talking about family, and you could feel the room tighten. He didn't speak like someone chasing sympathy. He spoke like someone trying to say the truth cleanly. He emphasized that love and connection outlast awards, and that the people closest to you are the part of the story that actually matters. He spoke with pride about fatherhood, with visible emotion about the bonds that shaped him, and with real tenderness about the loved ones whose influence still guides him. He also talked about filmmaking in a way that sounded less like industry talk and more like personal philosophy. Emotional truth matters more than spectacle, not grand gestures, not expensive sets. Just human experience captured honestly enough that the audience recognizes themselves in it. He acknowledged that commercial pressure can squeeze meaning out of a project if you let it, and he credited his best work to protecting the heart of the story, even when it would have been easier to chase trends. Another part that caught attention was how directly he spoke about aging and legacy. He didn't frame it as doom, he framed it as reality. Time doesn't negotiate. He talked about wanting his work to mean something beyond nostalgia, and about hoping the stories he helped bring to life made people feel more connected, more compassionate, or at least more awake. He didn't ask to be mythologized. He asked people to remember the human scale. He's also been open for years about questions of faith and identity. He has described his upbringing as culturally Jewish rather than strictly religious, and he has talked about his bar mitzvah as more cultural milestone than spiritual transformation. He has also spoken about how his father wrestled openly with belief, especially in the shadow of the Holocaust. That atmosphere of questioning seems to have shaped Rob's worldview: curiosity over certainty and responsibility over doctrine. In a 2012 appearance on Real Time with Bill Maher, Reiner described himself as atheistic and not religiously affiliated, framing his outlook around skepticism and human responsibility rather than traditional belief. At the same time, he has expressed interest in Buddhist ideas like mindfulness and compassion, not as a rigid identity, but as tools for living with more awareness. That combination fits the way he works: grounded, questioning, emotionally literate, allergic to pretending. Toward the end of the conversation, what lingered wasn't a headline. It was the sense that Reiner was offering a quiet blueprint. Tell the stories you need to tell. Love the people you have while you have them, and don't wait for permission to be honest. Viewers weren't emotional because they were told to be. They were reacting to the rare sight of someone successful speaking like success isn't the point. And if you want more of these human behind-the-scenes chapters from the Golden Age and the artists who shaped it, subscribe for follow-ups and updates so you don't miss future parts. Rob Reiner's impact isn't just the filmography. It's the proof that range can coexist with sincerity and that comedy can carry real emotion without turning cynical. Whether you agree with his politics or not, whether you grew up quoting The Princess Bride or discovered Stand By Me later, the work has stayed because it understands people. So what did that candid interview leave you thinking about most? The films, the family, the reflections on time, or the idea that storytelling can still be a bridge in a culture that feels split? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if you felt something real, and don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories.